people always warn you about the usual house hunting pitfalls: leaking roofs, faulty wiring, suspiciously low prices. Yet they never caution you about a house's hidden occupant, an old presence hungry for the unwary. When the Moore family found their dream property in the sleepy outskirts of Glenfield, they believed they'd scored a remarkable deal. The large Victorian home boasted a roomy porch, multiple bedrooms, a big yard for the children to play, all at a shockingly modest price. They attributed it to the house's age and remote location. The real estate agent shrugged off questions about the property's past, offering vague replies about lack of documentation. Eager to move from their cramped apartment, the Moores ignored any red flags. Within a week of relocating, subtle strangeness seeped in. Certain rooms felt drastically colder, even in daylight. Faint scraping or tapping at odd hours, though no visible cause. Doors that were definitely locked at night somehow lay ajar by dawn. The father, Glenn, dismissed these as old house quirks. The mother, Lucy, rationalized the cold spots as poor insulation. The children, Becky, 9, and Toby, 7, shrugged off the occasional weird noises as the house settling. Yet an intangible hush grew in the corridors, as though the walls exhaled a silent warning. That hush thickened whenever the children played Explorer in the upper floors. They insisted certain corners made them uneasy, yet they couldn't explain why. Only after the family fully settled did the real torment begin: nights of whispering behind walls, illusions of a tall shape slithering from shadow to shadow, and most disturbingly, an invisible presence seemingly inviting the children to a secret game. Becky started telling Lucy about hearing a voice in the walls softly calling her name, urging her to come hide. Toby claimed the older sister might be tricking him, but soon he heard the same voice. Glenn tried to brush it off, but when the nightly hush overshadowed the house, quiet so profound it snuffed out normal night sounds, he realized something insidious lurked within. The final sign was the unshakable sense that they were never alone in any room, that a presence watched them from angles just out of sight. By the time the children confessed they'd already begun a hide-and-seek session with an unseen friend, the Moores recognized the gravity of their predicament. For the more the children played along, the deeper the spirit's hold grew. And every new round of the game left them fewer ways out of an intangible labyrinth formed by the house's shifting illusions. The kids' laughter turned uneasy. Corridors stretched or vanished. And soon, one child vanished, then the other. For Lucy and Glenn, the question was no longer whether the presence was real, but how to rescue their kids from a demon that turned hide-and-seek into a gateway to multiple dimensions of the house, a labyrinth from which no child easily returns. The Moores arrived on a crisp autumn morning, excited by the house's grandeur: tall windows, ornate moldings, even a charming turret that Becky declared her Princess Tower. In the swirl of unpacking, no one paid attention to the quiet corners or the hush in certain upstairs rooms. Lucy found it quaint that some doors had old-fashioned locks. The basement had ancient shelving, and the attic had dusty trunks. The children squealed in delight, exploring each floor, each closet a new adventure. Glenn was relieved the structure's basic checks seemed fine, no huge repairs needed, at least at first glance. But subtle oddities surfaced in that first week. Lucy noticed how the second-floor hallway was always colder, even when the thermostat was turned up. She also found the children's bedroom door occasionally open at night, though she recalled shutting it. Becky insisted she woke to footsteps outside her door at 2 a.m. But Glenn, checking, saw nothing. Toby complained that a closet in the upstairs hall sometimes rattled from inside. Yet every time Lucy or Glenn checked, it was silent. They reasoned these were normal old house quirks. The children were told not to fret. Simultaneously, Becky and Toby began referencing the hidden man in the walls. Lucy assumed it was a game Becky invented to spook Toby. But Toby seemed equally convinced. They whispered about hearing faint knocks that corresponded to their knocks on the plaster, as though someone tapped back from within. Glenn tested it once, knocking on a suspicious wall. Silence. The kids insisted it only happened when grown-ups weren't around. The hush, an intangible sense of being watched, stirred behind the normal bustle, letting the tension slowly brew. Becky explained it as if the house itself was breathing, waiting. Toby had nightmares of a tall figure crouching by his bed. Half smiling, Lucy assured them it was just a bad dream. None of them realized the entity was quietly studying them, preparing to orchestrate a twisted game of hide-and-seek. About 2 weeks in, Becky shyly mentioned to Lucy that she had a new friend she heard calling her name in the hallway. Lucy, alarmed, asked what this friend looked like. Becky responded that she never saw them fully, only glimpses. A shape in the corner or a reflection in the mirror. The voice was neither male nor female. Gentle yet insistent, proposing a fun game after bedtime. Lucy brushed it off, suspecting Becky had an imaginary friend, which many children do. Meanwhile, Toby scoffed at first, but soon admitted hearing the same voice at night, though more softly, as if encouraging him to keep quiet about it. Lucy's maternal instincts flared. She told Glenn they might need to crack down on bedtime stories, or check if the kids were scaring each other. Glenn chuckled, referencing how old houses can produce illusions. He assured Lucy no real threat existed. Yet Lucy's intuition was unsettled. She began checking on them nightly, noticing Becky's bed sometimes empty at 1 a.m. Becky found in the corridor yawning, claiming she was playing hide-and-seek with the house. Toby, too, started waking up in different corners, or curled in a closet, saying he lost the path. Lucy demanded to know who told them to hide, but the children only gave vague answers about the nice friend. Glenn hypothesized that the kids might be sleepwalking, possibly stressed by the move. Lucy tried locking bedroom doors, but each morning discovered them unlocked or open again, as if the children overcame the locks from inside, or someone else did. A hush overshadowed the entire second floor, as though the house disliked being locked. The children's midnight wanderings escalated. They insisted the voice gave them clues on where to hide, that hidden passages existed behind certain walls. Lucy and Glenn found no passages, but occasionally discovered a half-open panel in the attic or a suspicious gap in the basement shelves. Each time they sealed one area, the kids found another. Tension soared. Lucy realized some intangible occupant manipulated them. But how to fight a presence that lured them from behind illusions? An older neighbor, Miss Ferris, who'd lived on the street for decades, overheard Lucy's complaints about random corridor changes. She delicately asked if the children had begun disappearing at night. Taken aback, Lucy pressed for details. Miss Ferris recounted the last family living there, the Farnhams, had 2 children who similarly reported a playful spirit leading them through hidden nooks, culminating in both kids vanishing one stormy night. Officially, the Farnhams moved away under suspicious circumstances. The father claimed kidnappers. Miss Ferris insisted the father ranted about the house devoured them. Lucy's stomach turned, hearing how Miss Ferris believed an ancient spirit inhabited the house, shaping illusions to trap children in pockets of reality behind the walls. She mentioned local whispers about a caretaker demon who used hide-and-seek as a gateway. Alarmed, Lucy told Glenn, who was furious that no disclosure was made during the sale. They confronted the real estate agent, who feigned ignorance. Glenn fumed, but Lucy recognized that if the caretaker demon existed, legal disclaimers wouldn't matter. They considered moving out, but finances were tight. Also, Lucy felt certain the caretaker might not let them leave so easily if it had fixated on Becky and Toby. She recalled stories of families who tried fleeing but found themselves tormented by illusions. They decided on a short exorcism attempt, maybe calling a local spiritual advisor. Glenn remained half skeptical, but with the kids' midnight wanderings intensifying, he conceded something had to be done. Meanwhile, Becky and Toby grew quieter, as if parted from normal life. Toby confided in Lucy that the friend promised them a final grand hide-and-seek soon. Becky admitted she felt compelled to follow. Each morning, the hush in the house felt heavier. Lucy detected illusions, the living room's layout shifting subtly, a door appearing where none existed, then vanishing. She realized time was short before the caretaker demon made its final move. One late afternoon, a local spiritual advisor named Eileen arrived. Responding to Lucy's plea, Eileen specialized in cleansing haunted spaces or guiding restless spirits. She explored the house, remarking on immediate cold spots in the upstairs hall, intangible footsteps, intense hush near the children's bedrooms. She concluded a powerful entity hovered, a caretaker demon that fixated on children, using illusions to lead them into hidden pockets or dimensions. Eileen tried a simple blessing, scattering salt along door frames, chanting a protective prayer. The hush resisted, flickering lights, causing Toby to shriek when a shadowy shape passed behind him. Eileen insisted the caretaker was deeply rooted. She urged the family to keep the kids from playing any invisible friend games, especially at night. For a day or two, the children seemed calmer, less enthralled by midnight escapades. The hush retreated a fraction. Eileen promised to return with more robust exorcism tools in a few days. However, the caretaker evidently disliked her interference. On the second night after Eileen's visit, around 3 a.m., Lucy and Glenn awoke to shattering glass sounds. Rushing out, they found a hallway window broken from the inside, the children missing from their beds. Panicked, they scoured each floor. In the third-floor storage room, they saw faint footprints trailing across dusty boards, leading to a locked door that previously didn't exist. Tearing it open, they discovered a vacant storeroom with no sign of the kids. Then behind them, the hush nearly roared, illusions swirling across the walls, showing fleeting glimpses of Becky or Toby giggling, then fading. Lucy sobbed in terror, calling out for them. Then the illusion ceased, leaving the parents alone in that hidden storeroom. A caretaker's childlike whisper echoed, "Play with me." Glenn bellowed for it to reveal the children. Silence. They realized the caretaker had fully begun its endgame, pulling Becky and Toby deeper into the house's labyrinth. While Lucy and Glenn panicked, Becky half knew what was happening. She'd followed the caretaker's gentle push out the window, stepping onto a precarious ledge that, impossibly, connected to a different corridor. Toby joined, unsure but enthralled. The caretaker demon whispered reassurance, "Hide, and I'll find you. Or maybe you'll find the path to a secret wonder." The hush overshadowed normal sense, painting every vantage with faint illusions of a magical kingdom behind each door. Becky felt fear but also a bizarre excitement, as if enthralled by the caretaker's illusions. Toby trembled, wanting to return, but each time he tried, the caretaker's hush steered him another way. They soon discovered corridors they'd never seen, a split level leading to a half-floating staircase, rooms with swirling patterns on the walls, and corners that looped back incorrectly. The caretaker's illusions formed a vast, layered dimension behind the house's normal structure. Becky tried to keep Toby close, but he slipped away at times, chasing a half-laugh echo. The hush intensified. Over hours, They found themselves in an intangible hide-and-seek that overshadowed reason. Becky glimpsed locked doors opening onto starless spaces, or floors that twisted. She realized with a flicker of panic that the caretaker's game was not just child's play, it was an elaborate snare. They might never see daylight again if they didn't break free from the hush. Lucy, frantic with anguish, called Eileen again at 4 a.m. Leaving a tearful message, the kids vanished inside the house. By dawn, Eileen arrived with heavier exorcism supplies, purified chalk, a specialized incantation for multi-portal hauntings. Glenn was on edge, brandishing a crowbar, determined to pry open every locked door until they found the kids. Eileen explained that the caretaker demon likely trapped them in illusions layered behind normal space. They must forcibly sever the caretaker's hold, or it might keep the kids hidden. The caretaker, if cornered, could lash out violently. At sunrise, they roamed the house, trying to replicate the illusions but found only normal rooms. The hush receded in daylight. The hidden door from the night before was gone. Eileen said that the caretaker's domain might only fully manifest at night. They realized the kids might be stuck in that intangible labyrinth, with no normal route out. Eileen proposed a final, major exorcism at midnight. They'd face the caretaker in its prime. Lucy shivered, but her love for Becky and Toby overshadowed her fear. If that was the only route, so be it. All day, they prepared. Glenn hammered the broken window, sealed off potential illusions, though Eileen insisted illusions wouldn't be blocked by physical nails. Lucy sobbed at the children's empty beds, praying they still lived. Eileen set chalk lines across thresholds, reading incantations that would be activated once darkness fell. Each adult steeled themselves for the hush's return. That night's forecast included thick clouds, perfect for the caretaker demon to intensify illusions. By 11 p.m., the hush began creeping in, lights flickering. Lucy and Glenn stood with Eileen in the living room, the floor covered with a circle of salt and chalk runes. The caretaker demon, presumably, was stirring in the upper floors with Becky and Toby. At midnight, the hush soared, every light in the house dimming. Eileen recited her incantation, sprinkling water along door frames. The caretaker demon responded with illusions. The walls rippled, corners shifting. Lucy glimpsed a hallway door twisting open, revealing a corridor that shouldn't exist in normal geometry. Eileen declared that they must pass into that corridor to rescue the children, using the incantation to keep the caretaker at bay. Glenn gripped a crowbar. Lucy held a flashlight. Eileen carried a staff etched with symbols. They stepped through the corridor threshold, the hush nearly deafening them. Inside, the environment mutated into a bizarre architecture, flights of stairs leading to half-floating landings, multiple doors in impossible arrangements, faint flickering lamps that cast dancing shadows. The hush overshadowed normal hearing, replaced by an intangible static. Eileen led them deeper, chanting a line at intervals. "We demand you release the children." The caretaker demon's illusions responded with fleeting glimpses of Toby or Becky scurrying around corners, calling, "Mommy, Daddy." Lucy tried chasing them, but Eileen insisted it was illusions. The caretaker used the children's voices. Glenn, however, realized they might indeed be the real children forced to roam. They had to confirm, so they advanced more carefully, chalking the walls to mark their path. Eventually, they found an upper corridor that dead-ended at a large door. Lucy heard Becky's voice behind it. She flung it open. Inside lay a swirling chamber of half-luminous patterns. Becky stood in the middle, tears streaming, Toby cowering behind her. They were real, though partially overshadowed by illusions of ghostly shapes swirling overhead. Lucy rushed forward, hugging them. Toby sobbed about being lost. Becky cried that the caretaker forced them to keep hiding in new rooms. The hush roiled. Eileen demanded they gather quickly, for the caretaker might strike to keep them from leaving. As Eileen guided them to recite a closure prayer, the hush peaked, the caretaker demon materializing at the chamber's perimeter. A tall, shadowland figure, intangible arms spanning the walls. The illusions swirling overhead took monstrous forms, alligator-like silhouettes, childlike faces morphing into warped visages. The hush hammered their skulls, each step feeling like trudging through thick air. The caretaker advanced, hissing or moaning silently. Toby screamed. Becky clung to Lucy. Glenn lifted the crowbar, though it might do little to intangible forms. Eileen recited the final lines of her exorcism by these words: "We sever your illusions. By this bond of family, we free these children from your domain." The hush roared like a storm, the illusions intensifying. The caretaker demon lunged. Intangible jaws parted. Eileen brandished her staff, scattering powder that crackled with shimmering sparks. The caretaker reeled momentarily, illusions flaring. Lucy and Glenn shielded Becky and Toby behind them. The caretaker hissed again, intangible arms thrashing. Eileen chanted louder, "Be undone. Caretaker, your shadows dismissed. Your illusions dissolved." The hush vibrated, every corner shifting. The corridor behind them reopened, revealing a normal hallway glow. The caretaker let out a final silent shriek as illusions of walls, twisted floors, half-floating landings all collapsed into standard architecture. The hush shattered in a pulse, replaced by the house's normal lighting. Lucy gasped, seeing they now stood in the second-floor corridor. No swirling illusions. Becky and Toby safely beside them. For a tense minute, no one moved, expecting the caretaker demon might reappear. But the hush was gone, replaced by typical night sounds, faint wind outside, the house's quiet creaks. The children sobbed in relief. Eileen, trembling with exertion, declared that the caretaker demon's power was forcibly severed. This might not be a permanent banishment. Some forces re-emerge if conditions allow, but for now, the illusions were dispelled. Lucy and Glenn, tears in their eyes, realized they'd reclaimed their children from the labyrinth. The entity that manipulated hide-and-seek was beaten. They left the second floor, returning to the living room salt circle. The caretaker demon did not strike again that night. By dawn, the entire house felt normal, no cold spots, no illusions. Eileen told them to remain vigilant. The caretaker might be dormant or lurking in a lesser form. Lucy and Glenn concluded they must move out eventually. But first, Eileen recommended a final cleansing. Over the next few days, they systematically placed protective wards, recited prayers, sealed hidden panels. Becky and Toby refused to sleep alone, traumatized by the caretaker's illusions. Over time, with therapy and comfort, they regained some normalcy. Though nightmares lingered, the Moores refrained from sharing the full story with the public, expecting no one to believe that a caretaker demon manipulated their children in a twisted hide-and-seek. Officially, the family just said they had a frightening supernatural experience. Eileen's cleansing was enough for the caretaker demon's illusions to remain quiet. At least, Lucy, deeply shaken, insisted they place the house for sale. Glenn agreed, though the property's history might hamper prospective buyers. For the sake of Becky and Toby's well-being, they decided to relocate closer to Lucy's relatives. Some nights, Toby still woke screaming about a shadow calling him to hide. Becky occasionally whispered that the caretaker might reassemble illusions if they let it. so the Moores took no chances. In the months that followed, no new occupant moved in. The property lingered on the market. A handful of prospective buyers visited, many departing with uneasy feelings. Lucy suspected the caretaker demon remained subdued but faintly present, scaring them off. Meanwhile, rumors about the house where children vanished circulated quietly. The Moores eventually settled in a new city, the children gradually recovering from nightmares. Glenn and Lucy seldom spoke of the caretaker demon, wanting to bury that horror. Yet Lucy sometimes worried, what if the caretaker eventually found a new family? New children it could entice into playing hide-and-seek behind illusions? The final hush might remain dormant but never truly destroyed. She recalled Miss Ferris's account of previous vanishings. Perhaps the caretaker had lurked for decades, only discovered occasionally when children answered the hush's call. Lucy concluded that the best defense was awareness, refusing to play any invisible friend game, ignoring illusions. She told Becky and Toby repeatedly that if they ever sense intangible voices urging them to hide, they must run to grown-ups immediately. Years later, the caretaker demon's domain stands partially sealed behind Eileen's wards. The Moores have a new life, the children mostly forgetting the terror of endless corridors and hush-laden illusions. Yet the old house remains on the market, unoccupied. Some nights, passing neighbors claim they see shapes moving behind its windows, or a faint childlike giggle echoing from the yard. The real estate listing never mentions the caretaker demon, nor the illusions that can transform the interior. But locals keep an unwritten rule to avoid the property after dark. Some suspect if a new family with children arrives, the caretaker demon might awaken, luring them to a malicious game. Others believe Eileen's exorcism permanently suppressed it. Lucy quietly prays the demon's illusions never re-emerge, that no children face the unstoppable hush that once overshadowed Becky and Toby. But as with many malignant forces, banishment or sedation is rarely absolute. In the hush of certain nights, the old house still exhales a faint presence. Neighbors might hear a random knock or glimpses of a tall shape crossing an upstairs window, though it's locked from inside. A leftover echo of the caretaker demon's domain, waiting for the next unsuspecting occupant who fails to heed warnings. Then the caretaker might resume its twisted game, an invitation to hide and never be found. Because in that labyrinth of illusions, each step away from normal reality leads deeper into corners no exorcist can fully purge. Corners where children's laughter sours into screams that vanish behind intangible walls. If you stand in that hallway at midnight, you might still hear the caretaker's whisper, "Come play. Children, it's time to hide."